Okay. And as is normal, as is usual with our agenda, so the first item is public participation. Looking out into the public, we have public today. So I invite anyone who wishes to speak to please come forward. Please do identify yourself when you start. Got to turn it on.
Thank you. Chris Starr, 6 Littlefield Road, Acton. I actually, as I might have mentioned earlier when I came in, I wasn't really planning on being at this meeting. We just accidentally happened. I know that people don't usually trip into the FinCom meeting scenario, but I guess we did because we thought we had another meeting.
Let the record show we didn't actually trap him here.
Duly noted. So anyway, the reason why I'm here, I'm Chris Starr. I'm the owner, the proud owner of the Bueno Isano property on the corner of 27 and 111. As you all probably know, or of course you know, there's the Kelly's Corner infrastructure improvement project slated for Kelly's Corner. And as a 19-year resident and as a landowner and as a small business person myself, I'm deeply concerned about the economic development that may or may not come out of this. I'm concerned about the total dollar amount that's going to be spent on this infrastructure project. I'm concerned about the timing and how that's going to impact small businesses. And finally, I'm concerned about how this is going to impact our tax base. And so while I didn't really come here thinking I was going to be talking to you folks today, I really felt that these things needed to be said. First and foremost, I think that we all want to see something happen at Kelly's Corner. We're developing a coalition of business owners, landowners, people that are interested in keeping the village feel of Kelly's Corner together, and also preserving the trees in the town center, and also protecting local businesses and the economic development of the town. And we're all very, thinking that speeding up the traffic, that this plan was designed to be really, as it was billed by the DOT, the Route 27 is a major arterial road under DOT guidelines, and as such is a regional connector between a number of communities throughout the region. Now, that doesn't mean that our town necessarily has to prioritize that traffic over local needs, and that's what I'm concerned is happening here. That if we just are looking at just increasing flow of traffic through the intersection. First of all, I think that there are other alternatives that we could look at that might be a lot cheaper. But I think we also need to look at the economic impacts of that. As we've all seen places like Willow Books, the Happy Chocolatier, is it Happy? Yeah, now very unhappy Chocolatier, sorry about that. No, but they unfortunately had to close down, and it's unfortunate to see that we're losing our local businesses. And that's an important part of our tax base, an important part of employment of the country, and should be something that we're concerned about. And hopefully I would assume that the FinCom would be concerned about that as well. But to get more to the points that are important to FinCom, there's a massive amount of local, state, and federal money that is earmarked for this project. I think that also you need that we still, I've been asking these questions about how much is this really going to cost? And I get shrugs, and I got, I don't knows at town meeting. I got a number of, I don't know. How much is it going to cost for the takings? I don't know. How many parking spaces and how is this going to impact the businesses in Kelly's Corner? I don't know. So I would challenge the FinCom, if it hasn't done so, yet to get ahead of the curve, because I know it's what generally happens. In town situations, I don't know anything about Acton, but the planning department or whoever is sponsoring a plan says, here it is, it's packaged, it's good to go, it's good for Acton, all you have to do is rubber stamp it and pay for it. But I think that really we need to step back and see where all that money's going to and how it's going to, impact the economic development, and if that money is truly a good investment. Because I think that there are alternatives that we could be looking at that would be cheaper, that would be more immediate, because the current plan requires 6 years. It's the current KC plan is on the 2022 tip. That means we have to wait 4 years for it to start and another 2 years of construction. I went through this process in Belmont. I was involved with the Trapella Road redevelopment project, a very similar project to this, $19 million redevelopment. This is about $20 million. And basically, the businesses and the local businesses suffered throughout that 2-year build period. Okay, nobody likes to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about the temporary takings that'll tie up land for 3 to 5 years. Legally, they're going to tie up additional land that isn't part of the permanent taking, but is maybe 2 to 3 times bigger than the permanent taking. And the DOT guidelines say that those temporary takings are 3 to 5 year periods. So basically, landowners won't be able to use a good chunk of their property for 3 to 5 years. And if they go to finance their property, go to lease out their property, they'll be impeded by that. So I really urge you to get informed, get more information about this, and to potentially look at the alternatives I'm looking at with the Kelly's Corner Coalition, Green Acton, Republican Town Committee, and just go through this process with an open mind, because I would rather you guys look at it now in the summer when things are slow, instead of having this foisted upon you, maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks before town meeting or whatever the usual schedule is. So I thank you so much for your indulgence. Thank you for your time. And I truly would hope that we could, and maybe perhaps we could inform you a little bit too. We'll be happy to share what we know about the project. Thanks.
Thank you for your time. Since this was not on the agenda, we're probably not going to open up to questions and back and forth at this point. I would say that we definitely did discuss the Kelly's Corner changes in multiple meetings in preparation for the last town meeting. But yes, we hear what you have to say, and thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public who would like to take advantage of public participation?
Thank you. I'll be very brief. My name is Chris Bailey. I'm Chris Starr's partner on that property. And just want to add one more point to that, which is that he touched on the fact that the prioritization of objectives for the development of that redevelopment of that street and that intersection and those streets around that area is unclear. And frankly, that's putting it nicely. It has been basically designed to speed up traffic through that area. When the planning department told the public a couple years ago, when the process started and then the steering committee followed along, that the priority was to generate local business and to create a pedestrian area. And I'm not sure that that's really what has wound up happening. And I think that the reason for that is becoming clearer. There's a lack of cohesive leadership of the process. Chris and I have obviously been very involved. We have to be, because we have a very significant business interest there. We've never spoken to the town manager about the project. We've spoken with certain members of the planning department, And then fairly recently, we met the new land use planner who wasn't up to speed yet, is a lovely guy and seems pretty on top of it as far as getting up to speed. But then as soon as we got up to speed with him, he disappeared again, and we haven't spoken to him again since. No one seems to really be in charge. The selectmen have kind of tried. Mr. Benson, who's here, was very kind in reaching out and trying to coordinate and help. But when it came right down to it, it didn't seem like there was any cohesive understanding. We went to a selectmen's meeting a few weeks ago and were summarily dismissed. There was basically a verbal designation of how each member of the board planned to vote. Then there was an opportunity for us to get up and speak. Us and Chris and I and about 10 other people got up and spoke about why this was a bad idea, and then they took a unanimous vote in the other direction. No engagement with us, no discussion. There's no cohesive leadership going on here. And that's resulting in a real melange of different ideas and different objectives that aren't being met. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who'd like to address the committee? Okay. You're the Kelly's Corner liaison, representative? Okay. Guess we have more conversations to have. Okay. No one else coming to the microphone? I'll say the public participation is complete. Could you kill the mic, John? Okay. Yes. Okay. Next thing on our agenda is a conversation about the long-range plan in advance of the next ALG meeting. The next ALG meeting is Thursday morning. For anybody who is new to the committee or is not super well versed in ALG, ALG is the Acton Leadership Group. It's made up of a couple of members of the Finance Committee, 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, 2 members of the School Administration, 2 members of the Town Administration, and 2 members of the School Committee. And I think I've got everyone at that point. It is a consensus-driven group, which means that any one person can hijack it and say, no, we do not agree. It's kind of a lonely place to be when you do it, but you can do that. And the objective is to make sure that we have a unified position when it comes to town meeting. One of the benefits of this is that everything can have a good, clear airing in a small group setting in advance. These are public welcome meetings on Thursday mornings. They're nice and early. But we have our first one coming up, the first one of the year coming up this Thursday, and it's if passed as prologue, this is going to be a get-to-know-you meeting and not necessarily a full-blown deep dive. That said, it's always best if we have our numbers in front of us and know what we are going to advocate right from the start. So I did ask Mr. Noon, who is the keeper of the long-range plan, although I know I should be taking it from him as soon as I possibly can. I asked him to take a quick starting stab at where we are, so I'd like to turn the microphone over to him to take us through the 2 of the handouts that are clearly not related to upcoming projects. Mr. Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, the long-range plan is something we developed a few years ago, and it's a series of interlocking spreadsheets with hundreds of formulas that tie into each other and sometimes don't. So I had better part of a day to get this done.
Thank you.
It may not be totally accurate that though I did find one error, but it wasn't with ours, it was with the last ALG plan. It was just a bad formula, and we didn't add in the Minuteman capital to the bottom line. So even though we thought we were in balance, It only affects the 20 and 21, not the budget year, so it's not a crisis. All right, so I'll talk first about the one that says decisions update or decision scenarios update. So this thing is driven by formulas and assumptions. And so this is an assumptions page. And it starts off by saying the tax levy will increase by 2.5% a year every year. For 20 and 21, there's some funny formulas in there because what I have to do is essentially make this thing mimic the ALG plan. Come up with the same numbers even though they weren't calculated in the same way. So that's why you see some new growth going down, you know, whatever. This is driven off FY19 budget numbers, so. Basically, it's going to say state aid's going to go up 1% a year. Excise taxes, fees, same thing, 1% a year. As far as expenses go, town salaries, 2.75% a year. Except for Brian's, of course, will get less. Oh, wait a minute. More, I meant more. Health insurance, 4% a year. Other fringes, which include pension and other insurances, 3% a year. Had to play with the capital and one-time items to balance, but basically close to $1 million a year. Now, new debt service. What we're looking at here is in 20, we put in $400,000. Now, part of that was applicable to the aforementioned Kelly's Corner project, so that actually won't happen. So it won't be 400. It'll be something less than that. Again, I'm trying to tie into the last ALG plan, so I'm keeping the assumptions the same as the one we presented at town meeting. So that what will happen in terms of new debt will be the Minuteman, which is 296, I believe, and whatever's left of the capital, excluding Kelly's Corner. Now, I'm using 21 as the year we go for the bonding on the fire station. That may be early, that may, you know, I don't think it's late, but that's an assumption. So that's why the new debt service jumps up to 955 in 21. Utilities, gas and diesel assumed at 1%, everything else is 2%, and the OPEB is fixed at 600 basically a year, which puts them on target to retire the liability in however many years, you know, 25 or 30. On teaching salaries, I assume that we step down off of the 4% to a 3% in 22. Other education, 3%. Same thing on health insurance and fringes, capital at $1.1 million a year. New debt, now I'm assuming we're going to hit the twin school debt at fiscal 23. Again, might be earlier than that, might be later than that. But for the purposes of this, it's an assumption. SPED tuition and transportation up 3%, other student transportation up 2%. Same basic assumptions on utilities and their OPEB. I think they'll probably hold at 900 for a couple of years and then move up to $1 million. Acton share, I'm assuming, steps down from 84, almost 85 in 20 to 83 by fiscal 24. And the Minuteman assumptions are laid out there. So when then you go back to the page that says scenario update. Yes.
Just a question on the health insurance. Does that take into fact that we actually got credits back from the trust? Does that you think it would be more than 4% in the general world, but our rate's going to be lower because of their sizable balance?
It was a decrease this past year of 5%. They do have a sizable balance. There's also some plan design changes that will hit this coming year. In fact, I'll get into this in committee reports, but fully 20% of the employees went to an HSA plan. So I don't think we're going to see I don't think our increases will be as high as the general population's increases on health insurance. Could be wrong. Been wrong on that one before.
And these are always, this is a multi-year plan, so these assumptions get changed multiple times over the course of even 1 year.
This is
a swag.
I call this one update, but because it's an update of the last one, and it's meant to, like I said, mimic at least the early years of the ALG plan. But the better name for this plan, it would be the Know Nothing plan, because we know nothing at the moment. We can only make assumptions.
Yep.
So the revenue side, basically, you see the tax levy going up. There is a line now for, the excluded debt, which had been going down, is now beginning to climb up. There is a line called debt capital override, which is, that's the twin school. It's actually going to be I think a capital exclusion, but but there'll be a vote on that one. And then these are the numbers that the assumptions produce. The net position before reserves is pretty much where we saw it for 20 and 21. Actually, it starts to ameliorate in 22, 23, 24. It's not quite as bad. And under these scenarios, we managed to not deplete our reserves below the 5% level throughout the forecast years, although that assumes a $2 million replenishment a year, which was last year's ALG assumption. And by what, September, this whole thing could be blown out of the water if that one doesn't come true. So you have to stay tuned on that. The significant thing to look at is if you look at the tax rate in FY24 compared to FY19, we're looking at $22.50 a thousand in fiscal 24 versus 1987 fiscal 19. So we're looking at a 16% increase over 5 years. Yes, Jeff, you object to that, I know.
Well, the reason why is we've got our heads in the sand because you're projecting a 2.5% growth in the value of your property over those 5 years. That's 12%. So now you're talking 30% growth when you add the tax rate increase as well as the value of your house increase. And I think that's the way we should be talking about the average or median tax bill for the taxpayers as opposed to the tax rate growth.
Neither the model, nor though the model has a line for it, nor the ALG plan captures the incremental taxation value of your property tax increase. But it is real. So
I think we if any committee's got to get that out in people's faces and make sure they understand the cost of their desire to have more services and those things. We need to constantly be saying what the dollar of impact is as opposed to subsets. So that's just my humble opinion.
this, like I said, this plan pretty much extends out the last ALG plan, which was one of the better looking ones we put out in the last 10 years. Obviously, as you get into the budget season and people come up with things they want to spend money on, or we get indications that some of these assumptions are not going to happen. Like they settle a collective bargaining agreement more than what's in here. All of that has a poor effect on the plan. As bad as that 16% tax increase is, this plan does say we can get those debt exclusions or capital overrides done without having an operating override, which is politically a very difficult thing to do. Anytime you put together a two-tiered override proposition, both capital and operating, you have trouble. It's just too much. I mean, we tried one in 2005, and the operating piece passed and part of the capital passed, but the larger part of the capital was failed. It's one of the few failures we've had recently at the ballot box. So I think from our point of view standpoint, it's important to try and make that point that we don't want to see a capital override and an operating override in the same year.
You're being kind. We want to do everything in our power to make sure that doesn't possibly happen.
It's early in the year. I don't want to make really hard statements. They can come later. Yes, Tom.
Steve, just
sorry,
a question. The FY19 column, do these numbers tie to the actual budget that was approved?
Which one?
FY19?
They should.
Okay.
Yeah, one other thing that I would also like to state that I definitely mentioned in the last ALG meeting. Just because we have reserves doesn't mean that we don't also have liabilities that are much greater than the reserves that we currently have. We are still working on the two capital plans, the capital reports that we received, one on the municipal side and one on the school side. I know that Christine did get some good news and a good explanation about the mysterious $4.4 million, which I'm going to let her present when she's here next. She couldn't make it tonight for all the right reasons. Congratulations to graduating sixth graders. Those reports should not just be something that we receive and put on a shelf. Those reports, I do believe, are a mirror into some of our deficits, into some of our risks. So while we may have some cash in the bank, it's not going to help us if the car breaks down, right? You still got to get around. You still got to get it done. So I would, by all means, it's good to have liquidity if need be, but at the same time, please don't look at these reserves and think that they're in a vacuum of other risks that we have, risks and liabilities that we have.
Mr. Chairman, you didn't ask for guidance because you're probably correct. This will be a meet and greet and get to know each other. But I would say that my guidance to you on ALG would be we're pretty much going to have to stick with the same kind of parameters.
Yeah, we don't want to
last year.
We don't want to. I don't want to let them off the hook on anything. Right. I just want to add more. One of the most closely guarded, closely watched numbers during the whole year is this reserve use. I mean, that seems to be the last thing that we argue about right up into the last minute of the last day. And so the sooner that we have some hard evidence about what these turnbacks are going to be, the better. I'm looking at you, Brian. You know that.
Brian's taking vacation for a couple months.
Yeah, if there's, I did not put official requests for feedback on the agenda, but by all means, I'm more than happy to, for Roland and I to hear which way you want us to take things. Absent any, and we have not had a full conversation about it yet. We want to let the point of view group, working group, get their thoughts to us first. That'll be when we really hash out what we're thinking. But generally speaking, I'm assuming we want to stick along with what we requested last year, with the added, please, more transparency. It's the thing that I didn't get last year. Mr. Burgard.
It's not about the numbers, it's about procedure. I'm really concerned that we're using this as a very important planning document, and people are relying on its accuracy. And what I think I heard Steve just say is somebody copied the wrong cell and a formula was wrong in one of the cells. That can't happen.
Excuse
It has to be.
Not on this plan, on the ALJ plan.
Right, I understand. I'm not, I should have prefaced it by, I don't believe you would ever make a mistake.
It happens, but
that's
we also caught a larger error.
Right.
Same way, because when I run this against and try and reconcile it to the ALG plan, that's the way I found the error right at the end of the ALG season.
So as a CPA, I get very concerned when we have not double entry bookkeeping where you find mistakes and everything has to tick and tie, but you can have one-sided entries because some formula didn't copy correctly or something like that. And I'm surprised the auditors wouldn't be very concerned about something like this. We either need to have an IT control that all the formulas are under frozen status and somebody, that we've proven and no changes can be made without going through tremendous rigorous evaluation, and that we don't just simply copy to the right when we want to add a year and somehow something doesn't work right because it's not just as simple as copying to the right. So notwithstanding we like the right numbers to be there, it's what I call the burp factor. You put in all these numbers and out burps an answer, and nobody knows how that answer got derived, that all the arithmetic works, but you just take the burped answer as the correct one. And I would suggest that we, either it's the selectman or the town manager, be instructed to work with the IT department to certify that the ALG program is in fact accurate and has locked formulas, and that there are no, that people just can't go in and change formulas and things around it, because like you say, it could be worse than a small embarrassment.
Steve, my understanding is the keeper of the ALG document is Steve Barrett, right? He's the only one that touches that. Is that correct, Brian? You and Steve.
Jason, generally what we did in the past is we alternated between the schools and ourselves. So every other year would be the town, schools, so on and so forth. I don't know if that's even been determined yet this year, who's going to be the keeper of the records. So I'm sure it'll probably come up maybe this Thursday.
See, just if I may add, Mr. Chairman, it's not about who controls what numbers change. That, that's okay. That people can, if you want to have 3 people changing the numbers, then God love you. But the formulas and the nature of what adds to what cannot be passed around from year to year. It's got to be locked, certified, and then you don't have to worry about, the total isn't really the total. And it's happened to me. I'm not casting dispersions on people, because I got to tell you, I've done it myself, and I've caught it many times, and it's quite embarrassing.
Mr. Majors, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think based on my experience with this plan, that I think there are lots of checks and balances in place. Numbers, some of the primary sources are the finance director of the town, the assessor's department, and so on. The last people you want touching that spreadsheet is the IT department.
Careful, I'm in IT. Not here.
But, so am I, but I think there are, as Steve, Mr. Noon has mentioned, these errors, sometimes happen in the heat of the moment, but they're quickly picked up, and they see even by looking at the numbers and the variances and comparing from one period to another that, if something's off base. And I think you could rest assured that checks and balances are in place and that the numbers are quite accurate. And they have gone, the town has gone through the audit process, and, they have awards hanging on their wall to testify to that fact. So I think we can put our confidence in this plan as pretty accurate.
Again, my fault, I was perhaps not clear. I absolutely agree with you, Mike. Absolutely. What cash in the bank should be the accountant putting it in. All I'm saying is, on these plans, many of the formulas are derived from the things that are put above. So if you have 20 lines and there's a thing called total, you don't put in the total. It's supposed to be the sum of those 20 lines. And IT has a way of locking the formula so that nobody accidentally deletes, adds another row and doesn't automatically add to the total that row. So now you got a total that's 20 lines, but you got 21 lines worth of data, and now you get the wrong total. So I agree that IT shouldn't be putting in any of the raw data, but somebody needs to lock the formulas, and when you want to add a new row, it's got to go through a process so that all the totals are added of that row and things like that. Otherwise, it's chaos.
So, Mr. Chairman, I may suggest that since this is not the only error that was found on the ALG plan last year, it's the only one that we didn't catch, that one of the things we do to get ready for town meeting is assign a person or persons from this committee to look at all the cells and make sure that the thing actually works, because it is included in our message, and therefore I don't want it to be inaccurate.
You just rendered my next sheet of paper out of date as we added another project for this year. Tom?
Steve, if I could, just on the line of the formulas, I do want to understand what's happening in the bottom block here called reserves, which begins with the net position, which is a deficit in each year. Then the town planned that 2 million kind of straight line for a while. Those are putbacks, are they?
The assumption is that's what we get back. So, so when the other line to cover deficit is really what I'm saying is
That's the use
the
of
actual
reserves.
real, we're digging into
So
the
that,
deficit.
which is what I thought, but then I'm seeing the reserves, if I'm reading it right, actually going up, even though we're dipping into them. Maybe not, maybe it's my eyes.
They go up until 21 and then they start going down.
But how are they going up if we're in fact eating into them?
Good question. That's a manual input line. I'll have to go back and look at it.
You just said that to drive Jeff crazy.
Could just be a case of a cell add and we should subtract or something.
Okay. Is there any guidance for Roland and myself that that anybody would like to bring to us in advance of this meeting? We will definitely, part of the subcommittee reports that Roland and I will, sorry, let me rephrase. On every one of our agendas, we always have subcommittee reports. One of the things that we definitely did last year is to make sure that we spent quite a bit of time both in preparation to and as a result after on the ALG to make sure that you know what was said on your behalf and are given an opportunity to give input prior to a meeting. So feel free to speak to Mayor Rowland if you don't want to speak in public, as we are your representatives in the ALG. Thursday morning at, I think, 7:30.
7:30 right here.
7:30 right here. You'll be there, right, Mr. Benson?
Do you know if the new superintendent or new town manager will be at the meeting?
So I believe the new superintendent will be in the meeting, even though he has not officially started yet. I know that he had to get voted in by the school committee to be able to go to this meeting in advance. I believe that was taken care of. Brian, do you know if the town manager will be at this meeting on Thursday morning?
I believe the plan is he will be attending, the last that I heard.
Okay. So even more reason to believe that this may be a get-to-know-you meeting, since two of the people not officially on payroll at the time of the meeting. Mr. Benson?
Yes, I understand Mr. Mangriotti will be attending Thursday morning. The new school superintendent will not be attending, unable to make it from what I understand.
Oh, okay. You have newer news than newer information than I do. Okay. Okay. With that, I'd like to move on to the projects and studies spreadsheet that I pulled together late last night. This is meant to be a full picture of everything that we discussed in our last two meetings. It is entirely possible that I missed one. But what I did want to do now is to go back through each of these and identify not just who mentioned it, but who actually wishes to run with it, and who the appropriate contact outside of this committee might be. And furthermore, what type of deliverable are we looking for at the end of it, so that we have, for lack of a better term, actual action items that we can march to try and have concrete evidence-based results. So taking it right from the top, report on the tax breaks for the businesses, did receive the, well, it was proposed by Mike. I believe it should be something that we do this year, and I'm actually going to change that field to ongoing. I think this is something we should do on a regular basis. Who would like to be the owner of this? You are happy to propose it and to own it? Excellent. I did see that we have our external contact. We have Brian McMullen, who did email the entire committee with the most recent reports. Don't need to discuss them in great detail now. Brian, you fine with being the external contact on that one? You're the right person for us to come talk to you about on this?
Yeah, that's fine, Jason. I know in that particular case, I actually reached out to the land use director, Matt Selby, because he was instrumental in getting those as well. But if you want to work that through me, that's absolutely
Is
fine.
Is Selby the better contact?
Is he?
Is he the better contact? Is it
If
more
you wanna-
efficient and better to go directly to him?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to go through me as a liaison, if you want to go to him directly, but, in any case, I would always ask that, any information you're looking for to receive is to go through obviously the town manager, and he will direct that to who he thinks is the proper contact.
Okay. Change that to town manager.
One detail, I think probably we should report on this maybe on a quarterly basis. Or
Let's find out what the expected encumbrance of paperwork from these companies is before we make that determination. What type of deliverable are you looking for? This report that we've received, is this what you were looking for when you?
well, basically, I think we just want to satisfy ourselves that when we issue these tax incentives, that the companies that receive them are in compliance. They're delivering to us what they promised to deliver with regard to employment and other, offshoots of that based on the incentives that they were given. It's just, are they on track or not on track? Are they delivering or not delivering? And it'd be in the town's best interest if we know sooner versus later that, they're going to meet their targets or not.
Okay. Mr. Berger.
I think what Mike is expressing is that, if I may add to your, that, there's a budget, there's a proposal, there's a forecast of, we do this, you're going to do this. And so the first step is, for every one of these, quote, deals or projects, we should have that commitment. This is what we're going to do, this is what you're going to do, in a quantitative way, so that you just then fill in the actuals in the columns as you go by year. So it's basically an actual versus budget and a forecast. So the real critical part is not the reporting actuals, is setting up the spreadsheet so you know what you're measuring in terms of, we're going to have 28 people we're going to hire every year of town people, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. So once you have the things that are quantifiable, then it's almost easier and trivial to measure what the actuals are. So I've always found 2 years later, it's people going back saying, well, what was promised? I don't remember. We don't have a record of that. So it's, if I may say, I think it's the most important thing is putting the stake in the ground as to what is promised and then measuring against it.
I think, this email, this report that was emailed to us today is a very good start. If upon reviewing it, if the sense of the committee is they'd like to do something as a follow-on step, we can take that up as a separate agenda item later. It was emailed today.
I didn't get it. I got it in all sorts.
Was it just me? It might have just been me. In which case I will forward it to the committee.
Thank you.
Yeah. Brian, there's no reason this can't be distributed to the committee. There's no reason this can't be distributed to the committee, correct?
I don't understand why it couldn't be. No, it's public information.
Perfect. Okay. Then,
I couldn't remember, Jason, if I sent it to you directly or the committee. Must
it's
have
okay.
been just you.
We'll real time make sure to solve that. Okay. Okay. Next item, status of litigation risk. This was proposed by Jeff, but this was well received by the committee. Is this something that we want to do every year, or is this something that we just want to get a snapshot in time now and see whether or not this is something we have to worry about? Mr. Noon.
Probably needs to be done every year, but I think town council is the wrong contact. You're going to have to work through the town manager, because anybody that wants to talk to town council has to go through the town manager.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I suggest you use the word yearly as opposed to ongoing?
Got it. Who should be the owner of this? And if it has to be the chair, it has to be the chair.
Might be a good one for you to take.
That's what I was thinking. We'll take that one. Okay. And the deliverable that we're looking for this is indeed a session with the town council in front of the committee, giving us a rundown of all risks that we need to be aware of. Is that? Well, the town manager was the person we contacted too, but I guarantee you'll not be the town manager that comes and gives us the presentation. Or I can't guarantee it. I would be shocked if it was the actual. Jeff.
I would just modify the deliverable as the year in review and the prospects of the next year, as opposed to just what is the risks facing in the future. Then you never really know what happened in the past.
Fair enough.
So, and if it's a yearly event, then the beginning of the discussion should be, last year you told us that the risks next year would be this. What happened? And did those risks come to fulfillment, or, how do we protect them, and those kinds of things. So it's always nice to start looking at what was said the year before.
Fair enough. Next item on the list was a question about the housing survey, the background and genesis of the housing survey. This was proposed by Steve. I think this is a one-time thing. I did already email on behalf of the committee. I received a response from Roland Bartle. I have not had a chance to fully review it, so I have not forwarded it to the committee yet. I'd like to read through it one or two more times and verify a couple pieces of information before I forward it on. Mr. Burghardt, you had two separate KPI recommendations. Not quite sure how you want these presented and what the deliverable that you were looking for. And are you happy to be the owner of these, having been the proposer?
The fiscal health probably can be rolled into the point of view in terms of some of the metrics. We said we were going to expand the point of view to some of the metrics that perhaps were in that database for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I'm happy to roll that as part of the expansion of the point of view and how we do ratios or compare to other towns or whatnot. That's as opposed to internal operating KPIs. As you remember, on Budget Saturday, different departments would come in and we'd say, well, is that good or bad that you have a certain demand on your services, or how do you measure that you're doing well? And we got more qualitative than quantitative answers back. And I think you get what you inspect, and it's important that individual departments have these internal ones. I don't know that we're going to share them this year. This new town manager is going to want to figure out things, but Brian and I have agreed that we can work with the town manager as advisors and maybe sit down with department heads, some of the key departments, the big departments, and maybe suggest things, do some pro formas, see if that makes any sense to them. Because it's been my experience that people really enjoy setting goals and meeting them and exceeding them. And so that's what internal operational KPIs are.
So that is a not this year, work in progress. Okay. Similarly, the report similar to the Concord Popular Annual Financial Report. You're willing to work on that to get the ball rolling? I don't think we're going to have it done this year. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I'll be happy to work after the point of view is solidified to come up with Rev 2 of it, which will be next year's point of view.
Sounds good. The management letter audit and review. Figured we needed to have two external contacts for this, one from the school side, one from the town side.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned, as I sent you an email 2 weeks ago, it's almost too late now. I don't know whether they're going to be able to meet with us in our 1 or 2 meetings in July. It should have been done this meeting or the prior meeting. I didn't hear from you. I don't know what the status is, but Brian and I agree that once we get too far into July, they're going to be closing the books. They're going to be in the midst of the audit. They're not going to want to talk about the last audit. I'm at a loss. I don't know why I've been asking about this for a year, and now we're too late.
Brian, were there any comments on the town from the last audit report?
Yeah, there were a few. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to share the last audit and a follow-up on that. If you want to get the ball rolling on that, I'd be happy to do that.
Sure.
Just to give you a status update.
When is it, so if we're too late for this year, if I'm trying to plan properly for next year, is this something that should be done in May or in June?
Say that again, Jason. I wasn't quite sure if I understood your question.
If I'm trying to plan this out for next year,
If you want to plan it out for next year,
is it something that should be delivered to the FinCom in May or in June?
yeah, I think it's probably a good time. In fact, I think we just got the management letter, I think probably just a couple of weeks ago from the last audit, so this would probably be a good time, May or June. So I think this would be good timing to do a follow-up on that letter, absolutely.
I'm real confused. The audit's done by October.
It is. And, well, it's not done by October, Jeff, but generally we try to wrap it up by the end of December because we need to submit that to get our CAFA, so.
I stand
yeah,
corrected,
yeah,
December.
The first of January.
The management letter should be January, at the
Just telling
worst.
you, when they finished up the management letter, we just got it, I think, a few weeks ago.
So, but then part of the discussion with this group, with the town manager or the auditors, if they put a representative, should be timely submission of input, like the audit management letter, because, you know, it's a June 30th close. I know it takes a while to get the things done, but, you know, the management letter could even precede the financial because the audit work is done. Yeah, the field work has been done, and one would hope that you don't get a year later, by the way, you don't do this good and you ought to think about changing it. It's really not very timely. So all the more reason for us to perhaps encourage this discussion between and the school as well.
Now you're getting into deliverable, Jeff.
Well, I understand, and maybe we've exceeded our authority, and certainly I wouldn't say it's an order, but, you know, as a CPA, I can't imagine getting a management letter out to somebody almost a year later, and they're already starting the next audit, and you don't have time to tell them how you're going to change things so that the next audit doesn't find the same internal control problems or other issues.
Why don't, Brian, if you don't mind, could you circulate the last management letter to the committee, and we'll take a look at it.
Didn't we get
Mr. Chairman, do you want to ask Dave at the schools if he could circulate his last management?
I will definitely take that.
Tell him Brian's doing it.
I'll ask Dave. Brian can do from the municipal side, right?
Yeah, well, Dave should have one from his auditors, the two different audit firms.
Right, so. we
Maybe
need
he
to make
got
two
his
separate-
back in December, who knows?
We need to make two separate requests. So Brian's here to take the request. I will request it of Dave Burlino. It has to be written down as an action for me.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know when I got it, but Steve gave me the town and school management letters, and I could have sworn that they were more in the winter time frame for the prior year, you know, for that year's audit, you know, in December or January, last year, so I don't know why it would be so late this year.
We'll know soon enough. We can check the date on the letter he sends out.
Okay. The next project that we are tracking is a scrubbing of the different trust funds. The different trust funds was what was brought up. Again, this should be, I'll change this to yearly. Good terminology there. I believe we had said that we need to make sure to run this past the Board of Selectmen to make sure there were no encumbrances that we may not be aware of for these different trust funds. So I was going to put as the external contact the BOS liaison, if the committee feels that that's appropriate. And Jeff, your name's on here a lot, Jeff. I don't want to put too much on you, but who wants to be the owner of this, and what is the type of deliverable that we're looking for? I was figuring some kind of scorecard of what is available for general use, I guess, is what is the bottom line of what we're hoping for. And I'm curious if the first time we run this scorecard, it comes back as nothing's available for general use because this is a trust fund and therefore it can't be kicked out. Yes?
I'm not volunteering, but just a point point of clarification, a question. By trust fund, do you also mean like warrant articles that were budgeted and never spent, so therefore get returned to the coffers, from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that are still sitting, a bucket of money sitting in places that will never be spent?
You're going back to the dark pools that Margaret was talking about a couple of years ago, yeah. I would say we should leave these separately, because this is, the trust fund is the different funds that are monitored by the town, but we have an accounting for every year, whereas it's a much more manual process to have to go back and try and figure out if there were different articles that were unspent. Yes, Jeff?
I'm happy to own that. I think the deliverable, the first deliverable, which I would assume the town already has, is the name of the fund. There are usually two separate sides to the fund, the principal and the income from the fund, and the restricted or unrestricted use of those funds. A one-sentence kind of thing. I'm sure there must be some sort of list. As part of the audit, I would imagine the auditors take some of the big ones, randomly select some of the small ones, and just make sure that whatever is used is for the intended purpose. The reason I brought it up is not that it would be used for unintended purposes that we're checking, but rather if the restriction is broad enough that we could use it for many things and it's still sitting there, the question would be asked, why not use it for the, and as opposed to this year, it looked quite obvious that there was quite a substantial income and very little was expended. Yeah. So I don't know what the right balance is, but it just looked out of balance.
I think it's a fine goal. I'm glad you're willing to track it down. My question is who's the appropriate external contact? Is it the Board of Selectmen liaison, or is it
it's in
Brian again?
No, it's all in here.
That, right? Okay, let's put it as Brian. Let's put it as Brian.
Mr. Chairman, Jeff, are you talking about just money, or are you talking about land? Because the town has land that has been given in trust under.
No, the word funds. So it's what's in the town report. It lists, and off the top of my head, I don't want to quote numbers, but there was substantial. There's usually two sides to each fund, a principal and an income. Yep. Cumulative income, and the cumulative incomes were growing, and the principals were tremendously growing, and I think we had very, very small expenditures out of the the income side. So it could be that somebody left $10 million and it can only be spent on, spading cats, and can't. That's all you can do.
Okay, so by all means, please look into it. Roland, my apologies for spelling your name wrong. Again, doing it quickly last night while watching the Yankee game.
That's the first mistake.
Yeah, I was far enough south that I got the Yankee, whatever it is, yes. The accounting of vehicles. Does anyone want to wrestle Roland for it, or is Roland going to own this one? Roland, it's all yours. Do you want to do this once a year, once every 5 years? How frequently do you want to do this?
I don't know if we have to do it necessarily every year, maybe every third year type of thing. And what I'm kind of envisioning is, okay, we have all these cars up behind Town Hall here.
Yep.
The car, what it is it Explorer, is it a Fusion, is it a whatever, the year, how much mileage we put on it a year, what departments use it?
So
that type of thing. And if we find a car, we have one, and we're out there and they put 100 miles on the thing, it's been sitting there all year round. Why do we have that?
I understand.
And how many departments actually need cars? I know Brian does, but he used to go back and forth to home every day, so they should have a company car. But how many do we actually need for a staff? I don't think the clerk's office needs
So this is a question,
thing.
this is a question I have because I just don't know. Do we go directly to a facilities director or do we have to go through a liaison? What's the appropriate protocol for making sure that the external contact is listed properly here? Does anyone know?
Mr. Chairman, probably the first thing, Roland, is I'll send you a list of vehicles that I accumulated under the capital report, and we'll see how that suits your needs, and then you can follow up with that. But I do believe I have a fairly long list of town vehicles.
Yeah, I'm just kind of concerned that we have more vehicles than what we need.
Okay.
And thus we're spending money on. We have to insure them, we have to register them, we have to maintain them, et cetera. And that's kind of where, you know, we need 13 cars where we really only need 7.
Who
That
is,
type of thing.
who would be the right person in the municipal government to bring this question to? Or do we have to go to various people?
Would that be a town manager?
The information you can get out of the fixed asset system, Eunice, but the whys and the wherefores, you'd have to go to the town manager.
Okay, put town manager down. And Roland, you're going to make a scorecard with all the details that you just pointed out. And the other one that I would recommend that you add is an expected end of useful life.
Yeah.
So that we know, so we have some visibility into forecasting as to when it's going to come off the books.
Yeah. Steve, if you could send me that report that you're talking about, that'd be great.
Dr. Evans suggested we have a conversation about synergies between the town and the school, taking advantage of the stars aligning of two incoming chief executives at the same time. I will take this one. I will have conversations with both of them to see if there's anything there. I'm a little questioning on what the deliverable is, other than just having a conversation and testing the waters. But I'm not expecting there to be a hard deliverable on this, other than please have the conversation and report back to the committee. Does that meet the committee's need? That one's mine. Our clerk has agreed to be the owner of the running record of institutional knowledge. I hope we've all emailed her already, even though I'm delinquent on that one. How frequently would you like us to sort of put that on the agenda and make sure that we haven't forgotten anything? Once a quarter, once every 6 months?
I think quarterly would be good.
Very well. So the deliverable on that one will be a quarterly agenda item to make sure that we keep it fresh. Mike, did you want to say something previously? You got my attention and then I forgot it.
Well, I was just, my 2 cents, I was just going to say, in some of these action items, we might be getting into the weeds where we don't need to be. I mean, I don't know if that's really our charter, and it's, you know, we have professional managers that are paid an actual salary to administer these things. We got bigger fish to fry, so to speak. End of my comment.
I hear you. Then again, I also take the advice from a couple of previous chairs who said we'll let people do as much work for the committee as they wish to do. Mike, you had suggested an annual planning calendar. This is similar to what we just added, a quarterly agenda item for the running record of institutional knowledge, having people in on when's the appropriate time for people to come on in and present to us. I think it might be very important that we add to that list the management letter audit review should be done in May or June, or shortly thereafter the receipt. I think the deliverable for that should be aggregating it and getting it ready for the incoming chair. That should be something that we work on this year and be able to hand.
Yeah, it could be, I see it as an actual calendar that we we sort of finalize at the beginning or prior to the beginning of our fiscal year, our Finance Committee fiscal year. That really outlines the year ahead. Who comes in with what information at what time of the year, so that we don't miss anything. Because we have a tendency, based on just the way life works, is that the closer you get to the annual town meeting, you know, all these reports, you know, come flashing in, you know, to meet their deadlines, and we really don't have time to process all that. But if we can spread them out over the year, put some organization to it, not that there is an organization now, but I mean, put some process that we know what's coming, so that the end of the year isn't, prior to town meeting isn't as crazy as it usually is.
Very good. You'd also suggested that we make sure that we are up on our training. I took the deliverable on that one, that we, the opportunities for the training need to be broadcast to the committee. So that one, I put myself down as responsible for that, or the chair responsible for that for future years, since it's a yearly item. One of the requests that we had from outside of the committee that Steve brought to us was a more discrete breakdown of what the tax rate, what the tax rate funds. So what percent goes to police, fire, school, OPEB, et cetera. Steve, are you good to own that one?
Yeah, I can do that.
Great. Brian's your identified external source.
It'd be fun.
And
I hardly need one.
fair enough. And what's the deliverable? Are we looking for a couple of charts that get put in the point of view? What do you envision as the end product that we're trying to achieve here?
Yeah, it'll start out as some fairly broad categories: education, public safety, maybe breaking down police and fire. How much we get into the comparative towns this year, I'm not so sure of. But
I meant to make that 2 light items, actually.
But yeah, we'll have something.
Okay. Jeff?
Just a suggestion, Steve, I understand that the town accountant has all the fringe for all the different departments, so.
I know where most of the bodies are buried in this town, Jeff. My problem with the comparative towns is I don't know where they bury their bodies.
Right, no, but I would encourage you to try and, if you're gonna break it out, like, this is how much we pay for safety, then I would bring in the full.
Yeah.
Great. Getting down to the last couple here. Purpose of reserves, the retirement of risk. This is what I mentioned earlier. These are the two capital reports that we received over the last couple of years. I didn't know whether I should put Dave Orlino down as the contact on the school side, or if I should put JD Head, or if I have to go through superintendent and town manager for all of this for protocol purposes, looking for guidance.
I would go with Dave.
Okay. And then on the town side, I was going to go through Selby. Is he the right person? Is he the owner of the buildings and facilities? I didn't think so. I thought it was somebody else, but I wasn't sure.
They work for him, right?
Roland, say that again.
Andrea Ristine is the municipal properties director.
Is she the better contact?
She might be a better contact.
Andrea Ristine?
R-I-S-T-I-N-E.
Okay. What's that? Great. Now, I have a very lofty deliverable on this. I would love to see a yearly dashboard. I mean, it clearly fell on deaf ears last year, but I would love to see this is, on the town side, I believe it was 26 million in deficiencies, and on the school side, it was 120 million in deficiencies. I would love to see this is where we started, this is what we did, this is what it actually cost us, and this is where we stand. Apparently that's a big ask, because I can't seem to get it, but that is what I'm hoping for. And I think it would serve all the entities in town well to actually do this, because then we have something we can present at town meeting, which in a quick visual way will show the value that we're receiving. Like I said, I didn't get very far with it last year, but I will try it again this year. I think it's an important thing for us to try and track down. Something that's been on the item, on the list of items in the past, might even be a good candidate for Christie's ongoing institutional knowledge tracking, a definitive list of town-owned properties. Who is the right person for us to?
Brian can run the report, but it is not succinct.
It is not succinct, so we need an editor. So Brian is the external contact, but we need an editor. Who is willing to be the editor of this town-owned properties report? You raised your hand, it's all yours. Thank you very much.
Christie, I have some information on this as well. I'll share with you.
And I'm glad you used the word that I used. Looking for succinct here. God help us. Okay, well, good. Yeah, good for you. Thank you. And then the item that just came up earlier today that we've added to the list real time is a joint ALG scrub, making sure, or a final scrubbing of the ALG document in advance of it going into our statement that goes into the town warrant. And that should happen yearly, and the owner is probably the chair on that one, but the chair this year will be leaning on people. And the deliverable is just a validated document. Okay. Now, it's entirely possible that I missed something in my review of the previous couple of meetings. If there is something that you know that I missed, please bring it to my attention, and we will add it to this spreadsheet and see what kind of action items we can get done for the in the year ahead of us. Anybody aware of anything that comes to mind that I missed? Great. Great. Okay. We have a set of minutes. Moving on to Finance Committee business, unless there's any objection. We have a set of minutes that came in for our meeting of June 12th. I believe there was one edit in the name that has been already taken care of. Were there any other edits or adjustments that people wish to make? I'm listening for a motion.
Second.
Very well. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Oh, not opposed.
Any abstentions? Roland abstain, and Roland and Christie abstain. Okay. I believe we are fully caught up on minutes at this point, which is great. Thank you. Dr. Evans will be happy and not tell me that I'm delinquent after half an hour on the job like he did in our first meeting. Committee reports.
He was going to have limited opportunities to do it.
So you're saying he took every opportunity he could get. Okay, that's fair. I respect that. Okay, committee reports. Any committee reports? Did anyone go to the board of selectmen meeting? Oh, sorry.
Jay, so we didn't get to the Board of Selectmen meeting on June 18th, but what I do have for future reference is the actual schedule for the end of the year, so I can pass this around to everyone. Jeff and I are tag teaming this. I get the first meeting of the month, he gets the second, unless we need to switch that.
Sounds good. I will let you guys run with it.
It looks like it's the first and third Monday, but not always. So I think it's important to have this.
Great. Any other committee reports? Ms. Majors?
Yeah, reporting for the Minuteman School Building Committee. Minuteman Vocational Technical High School hit a major milestone last Monday when the building committee approved and signed the guaranteed maximum price document, which is a pretty significant item. And basically, that it is what it says it is. It's a guaranteed maximum price for the project. The money ties to the schedule. So there's bucket of monies in the contract documents that finally get distributed and allocated to every line item in the Massachusetts School Building Authority's calendar. We address the schedule, and every item has a cost to it. There are sections that it addresses, such as the owner allowances, the cost of work allowances, the approved changes in the guaranteed maximum price, the pending changes in the guaranteed maximum price, and the schedule, and so on. And based on the hard work by the owner's project manager, which is Scanza, I think Acton Boxborough has the same project manager.
We do. OPM.
Which is good. The architect, which is Castle Bowes, and and especially the contractor, Gilbane Building Company, we reached this guaranteed maximum price, and Gilbane has publicly stated and guaranteed that people can begin occupying the new Minuteman School on July 25th, 2019, which is 1 year ahead of schedule. And so the whole regional district will benefit from the significant savings of finishing a project 12 months early. So I think the building committee and that project team has worked very hard, and this sort of guarantees that there won't be any cost overruns and or schedule changes.
Fantastic. Drop the mic. Any other committee reports? Steve?
Yeah, I went to the Health Insurance Trust meeting. We elected a new chair because Bob was chair of that. Mary Brolin's been elected chair for the next year. As I reported, both the town and schools reported a 20% enrollment in their health savings accounts, which were new for this year, and that's, in my experience, a very high percentage of people enrolling in that, and it should have some beneficial effects on our rates. The only other thing we did is we voted a stop-loss insurance carrier. The Health Insurance Trust is basically a self-insurance plan, and therefore they purchase from a reinsurance company a policy that protects them for any claim, any single claim that exceeds $120,000. So if it gets above that, then the reinsurance company takes over. We had a couple of bids. We took the lowest, but that's a fairly routine item, and that's really all there was to that meeting.
Thank you. Anything else, or should I move to the school building committee, which is mine to report on? The school building committee's next meeting is going to be July 2nd. more importantly, the proposals for the designer are due tomorrow. So we will get the designer proposals in our hands to review, think it through. We will discuss it as a committee on July 2nd. This is all in advance of making sure we that we present a unified front when we go to the MSBA to do the actual designer proposal, to actually select the designer. I do want to stress that unlike the OPM, the regional school district has a lot less of a say in what with which firm is going to be actually selected. We do not have as many votes, and we do not have the same say as we do for the OPM side. So that's actually good news. As soon as we have the designer in place, then we can start doing the heavy lifting of what we want to accomplish here. Are there any other committee reports? Okay, I have schedule on the list here. I should have pulled it, but since it's on the agenda, just reiteration, we're looking at the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month with more to be added closer to town meeting. Is there any other business that we need to take care of?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.